they'll write things like, this really isn't funny. And again, it's like, well, that's subjective because the other 120 comments are all laughing.
Right.
So clearly it's funny to them. Otherwise, they wouldn't go out of their way of going laugh, whatever, emoji, whatever it is that they want to laugh. So what I said, it's not funny to you. Please write, this isn't funny to me. At least this isn't funny to me.
Right.
You're missing the part where it goes to me. This isn't funny to you.
Welcome to the very first episode of the Last Days of Rome podcast. I'm Ray Lawrence. My first ever guest in this series is the very funny James Liotta. James is a stand-up comedian, wedding MC and radio host, and he's actually about to embark on his first ever solo tour, the Mum Is Not Happy special. So we're going to link to the pictures right now so you can see where he's performing in your city and get your tickets. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy my chat with James Liotta.
In a few months' time, you've got your national tour coming up, the Mum Is Not Happy tour that starts at the end of June. We'll post a photo with the dates as well as a link to your website where people can get tickets. Can you tell us about your show?
Yeah, sure. Well, basically, it's my first ever solo stand-up comedy show in a national tour format. Because for many years, I've just been touring with my colleagues, which I love to do. And to be honest, it's a lot more fun because you've got company, really. Touring solo can be lonely.
Right, but you're getting a lot more stage time.
Absolutely, because it's your own show. You are getting more stage time. But you've also got to fill it as well. So there's a big responsibility to put together a decent show. When you work with your colleagues, it's easier because you do your 20 minutes, your half hour, that's it.
So that's what it normally was? You were normally doing 20?
Yeah, normally do 20, then maybe do a sketch as well. But we all had shared responsibility because it's a collaborative show.
Right.
But also I just thought to myself, I just want one solo show at least under my belt.
Are you considering this a special?
Yeah, I guess so. And the show is just going to be a lot of fun about, with a lot of my material that I would consider some of my classic material, mixed with a lot of new material and content that I've been writing and testing out at some clubs.
Are you still testing it out now? Because there's 3 months to go. So is it still getting stronger or you think you're ready?
No, it's getting stronger. No, definitely. And I'm still testing. But, with testing, I just think, once you do it 2-3 times, you kind of know if it's got legs or not.
So 2-3 times for you and that's it?
Well, I don't see the point testing it out 25 times at a club. If it's a joke or some content that is not resonating 2 or 3 times, chances are, throw it out.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Are you mostly testing it out with audiences who already know you, or are you going into clubs just dropping in randomly?
Yeah, no, definitely with audiences that don't know me.
Okay, really?
Yeah. So when I'm doing a few spots at some of the comedy clubs around the country that are coming up, I wouldn't consider that audience that knows me at all.
It's more risky, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. But you get a more honest response.
Right.
Than if I test it out to friends.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So there's no fear though that if you're just performing in front of people who maybe aren't part of the Italian community, because I would imagine most of the special is about being Italian.
Yeah, look,
right?
the core part of it is about being Italian, and the usual stuff about the differences between ethnic families and Anglo families, my own personal experiences. But there will be some material there that's non-ethnic based as well. Just your general observational, opinionated kind of stuff.
You've said to me before that you do have a mix of material. I think you're mostly known for being an Italian comic.
Yeah.
But you do have material that's sort of what you call mainstream. That's the word you use?
Yeah, I do. I call it more mainstream. Material that you can go to other clubs across the country with a generic audience that's not skewed to one demographic or another, and just perform it, and hopefully it's just funny material that people will relate to.
Is that sort of material important to you in a business context or in an artistic context? And what I mean by that is, my guess would be, and tell me if I'm wrong, that most of your income in stand-up comes from doing comedy for the Italian community.
Yeah.
So why do you do non-Italian stuff? Is it because one day maybe you'd like to do an entire special of that?
Yeah.
Or just because you can do more gigs, like you can maybe MC events that are non-Italian? Is it a business decision to have that?
It's essentially yes. I don't know if I'd ever want to do a special or be interested in doing a special that's completely non-ethnic, because I love my ethnic humour. That's
Right.
what I do. But it does allow me to go to other events and other clubs across the country and have what we call a set that is doesn't rely on having to be an Italian or Greek or Lebanese audience or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, for me anyway, so that I can
Appeal to more people.
Yeah, that's right, really, yeah.
I want to ask you about how you see yourself as a comic. In my opinion, most comics, I mean, obviously everyone writes and performs,
Yeah.
but I've always thought that very few people are naturals at both. It tends to be performers who write or
Yeah.
writers who perform, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Would you say that you fit into one of those two categories?
That's a good question, yeah. I feel I'm more of a performer who writes, that writes for myself, mainly. Because the love is always in the performance. But, you know, when you're doing stand-up and you're an independent, you've got to learn how to write your own material as well, and it's important. There are writers who perform, but sometimes the performance isn't strong. They're just better writers.
Right. And you can tell.
They might write for others. And there's a lot of comics out there, the material you see them perform is not always their own material.
Right.
And they've got ghostwriters.
For sure.
And whatever deal they've got going with that, that's fine. The writer enjoys writing, and the performer enjoys performing those jokes, but they're not really their jokes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, would you ever consider writing for someone else? Have you?
I have dabbled in assisting some comics write material, but it's more just inspirational kind of stuff. Or they've sent me material and gone, "What's your take on this?" And I've enjoyed that too, because it sort of flexes my brain.
It's collaborative.
As well. It's collaborative, yeah. But I wouldn't say that, you know, when they perform it, I wouldn't claim that it's my material.
Got it.
Yeah, I've helped maybe.
Has anyone ever given you material?
When you work as an Italian comic, you are given material every single time you finish a show, because someone will come up and go, I got a joke for you. What about this one here? So in that case, yes.
But working with comedians.
You know what? They haven't given me material, but they've given me, what I love about my colleagues is they're not afraid to come up and go, hey, why don't you try this as a punchline on this joke that you do? It's all like it's good, but try this. And that's fantastic, because it's coming from people with a lot more experience than me. When I will take advice from people that I believe are worthy of taking advice from.
Got it.
When the everyday person comes up, and it happens a lot, they mean well, but
yeah, I mean, I think
it's not always great advice, you know.
I think a sense of humor is something that everybody thinks they have.
Yeah.
They may not necessarily believe they're funny, but they at least believe they have a good sense of humor.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be difficult to navigate, because somebody may come up to you and give you something, and you know it would never work. How do you go about telling them that?
You go, thank you very much, thank you. But you know yourself, Ray, that there are certain ways to construct gags and stuff. There are formulas there. Sometimes people just believe they understand how a joke's constructed, but don't really understand.
No, for sure.
But then if a genuine comic with experience comes up to you, and maybe you don't agree with their joke, but it comes from a place of some knowledge. So I'm happy to listen.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's important to listen, because you never know what pointers they can be giving you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Might not be for that gag. You could apply that to some other material.
I want to ask you about something that we've spoken about privately, which is...
Is this about the rash?
No, we'll come on to that. We'll come on to that. People sharing stories of them bombing, which I know is a pet peeve of yours.
We have talked about this, yeah.
Tell me what you think about this phenomenon.
Yeah, I don't understand it. I don't understand the logic. So there's a lot of comics out there. Look, your big names will never do this. Even if they have had a bomb, they will never do this. And I consider that a professional approach.
Right.
There's a lot of comics out there, they'll do like a comedy club, and maybe the set didn't go well, and They'll get back on their social media and go, oh, I just had the worst set, I bombed, or they hated me or whatever. Well, I don't know. I look at that and go, if I was considering to come to your show and I'm seeing you say that you, can we swear?
Go for it.
If you're saying you are shit, I don't know why that would make me want to come and see your show.
Yeah.
Like if I'm trying to sell a national tour and I go to a club and I just have a bad night, it can happen to every comic. And I get on my social media after I've told people, please come to my show. Oh, terrible night. Oh, you know, that no one got my jokes. I don't understand how this is helping me sell myself as a comic. I mean, maybe just keep it on the down low that you had a bad night, which can happen. It's fine.
Yeah. So my theory, and I've said this to you before, is that young comics, we're taught that bombing is a part of the journey. And so, in my opinion, what they're doing is that via social media, they're projecting this image of themselves as like a real comedian. If I'm bombing, it must mean that I'm a real comic because real comics all go through this phase.
They do.
The problem is, you may not get out of this phase.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's right.
So don't post this.
When they were taught that, Ray, that bombing, 100% bombing is part of it. And sometimes you need to know where you need to work on and stuff. I mean, I'm not saying... but I don't think they were told, when you bomb, promote it.
No, exactly right.
That's the bit that I don't understand. Bombing is all part of it. I've worked with Dave Hughes, and he's got stories privately backstage at the Comics Lounge. We had a chat. And he was saying stories about when he used to bomb.
Right.
And that's Dave Hughes, one of Australia's biggest comics. Whether you like him or not, he is. So everyone goes through it. But I've never seen him promote publicly.
No, it's a new thing. It's a new social media thing.
I mean, I'm not into it. I don't agree with it.
I think, what they're doing is promoting the comedy lifestyle. I think comedy's become a lifestyle.
Absolutely it is a lifestyle. So I think being a performer in general is a lifestyle, and that's why a lot of people don't always understand the life of a performer, a full-time performer. They don't get it. So what do you mean? What do you do? So what's your real job? Well, all those questions. And you know what? I've now come to the realization that it's okay for them not to understand. For many years, I was like, but why don't you get it? I'm a performer. I do shows. I do weddings. I go and do, I used to get a bit angry about it. Now I'm like, no, it's cool. Like, it's all right.
What did you want them to think? Like, why was that important to you?
I don't know. I used to think to myself, why is it so hard to understand? Because them not understanding is almost like saying that's not a real job.
Right. So it was a legitimacy thing for you.
Yeah. But now I'm like, it's cool. It's fine. It's not. There are other jobs that people do I don't understand. A lot of government jobs.
Yeah, mostly.
Now there's a lot of jobs out there, like I might not understand exactly what that's about. I'm like, that's cool. They don't, it's fine.
Right. But you would never ask them to justify themselves in a way that happens to performers,
No,
right?
correct. Good point. Yeah. No, I don't. I'm like, but, they like to... I think performing or being a comedian is just one of those jobs that people think, oh, you're doing this for fun. Like, no, some of us actually do it full time.
Because to them, it looks super fun. It looks like you're having a blast.
It is fun. Absolutely. It is fun. It's nerve-wracking, but it's fun.
Just quickly coming back to the bombing thing.
Sure.
I want to put this to you, and you tell me what you think. I also think a part of it is by posting failures, what it does is it adds this false sense of depth to the comedian. So look how sad I am right now. Look at this low moment that I'm sharing with you.
Yeah.
Therefore, when I'm funny on stage, it makes me appear like a very deep character. Does that make sense or does that not make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. I just don't subscribe to that attitude. That's all. It's a little bit like people who are always posting on their social media about their lows. Post whatever you want. I get it. It's your page, and I can scroll past. That's, But I just don't understand about posting all your lows all the time. And I mean, I got plenty of lows. I just don't post them.
Yeah.
So people think I'm always a success.
Right.
But we're not always a success.
Yeah.
There's jobs we don't get, auditions we miss, things that really, upset us. But what's the point? I don't want people's sympathy. Is a comedian who bombs and posting that they bomb, is it trying to generate people to go, no, mate, we love you, you're funny, you're always funny to us? I mean, I don't need that. You know?
I really think it's, for younger comics, it just makes them look cool in their mind.
Fair enough.
Bombing's become a cool thing. I don't get it, but...
Yeah, I don't get it either. I'm not, and you know what's funny is I'm not from that age group of the comics, they're much younger.
Right.
They're like 20 years younger than me. So maybe it is a generational comic thing.
A lot of them got into stand-up probably from listening to, let's say, Joe Rogan or Andrew Schultz or these sorts of guys online. And so they hear those stories. And I do think a lot of it's them trying to replicate it. But let's leave the bombing thing.
Yeah, fair enough.
So you mentioned something a couple of sentences ago. I mean, you're still constantly dealing with rejection. Even as a professional performer you, rejection is just a part of your life.
Will never leave you.
Right.
Will never leave you.
And have you gotten better at coping with that?
I think so. I think so. And I think that's what makes you a professional as well. Coping with rejection in this business, gives you that strength to go, yeah, I would have liked to have gotten that gig. I would have liked to have been looked at, but it's not for me.
Right.
So move on to the next thing.
How did you used to deal with it? So you would say that it was less healthy in your younger days?
Yeah, definitely.
You took it more personally?
Yeah, personally. No, it was very upsetting. The disappointment would last with you longer. Now it might just last with you 24 hours and you just be busy and get on with other projects that you've got.
Would you say that you're affected less intensely in terms of the negative emotions that you get from rejection?
Yeah, I think so. This mostly comes from TV auditions.
Got it.
I've had some good TV work, but there's plenty of big stuff I've missed or I've come close.
Yeah, that's got to hurt.
Mostly disappointments come from that, from TV and film work.
You also mentioned before being nervous sometimes, like nervousness is a part of the career.
Yeah.
Do you still get nervous before you go on stage? Maybe that's a bit of a basic question, but there's a reason I'm asking.
Yeah, sure. I think during the journey of your career, as it progresses, I think your the kind of nervousness changes.
Right.
So it's not a nervousness because you're not confident anymore. It could be just an excited feeling. Maybe, I'm going to be performing some new material, which, it's been tested. Not everything will be tested, by the way. I'm not afraid to just
try something.
Yeah. I will not be able to test everything because I can't risk just going to clubs just on testing material because
you do it with just a gut feeling, this will work?
I do, yeah. Particularly with the whole ethnic comedy stuff, there comes a point where you kind of know that this is going to land.
So you do feel like you have a sixth sense for what'll work and what won't?
When it comes to ethnic comedy, yeah. When it comes to the more mainstream stuff, I probably would want to test that a little bit more. But when it comes to talking about family and all those kinds of nuances and differences that exist, I feel even if I try one out, first go, I reckon 95% chance it'll get a giggle, it'll get the laugh.
They're good odds. The reason I ask was because I often look back at the way I approached stand-up sometimes, and I notice mistakes. And so speaking of nervousness, and it's related to the bombing topic as well, when I was a younger comic, I thought the idea is to lose any fear. And so I would make myself bomb. I would sometimes go on stage almost with nothing planned, and the idea was just keep bombing. And it worked in the sense that I would go on stage, it wouldn't go well, and I wouldn't care. The problem was then when I would try material that I actually cared about, you're kind of still going on with that energy. And I've noticed the nervousness helps. You'll just do so much better on stage when you're nervous, because otherwise they can pick up on the fact that you don't care, really. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But did you just said that you almost didn't care that you were bombing. So it didn't affect you in that moment that you're bombing?
So again,
with the audience not reacting or not giving you...
I'm using the word audience very loosely because these were mostly open mics where I decided to do this. So it's open mics in front of other comedians, and most of the time they're not listening. Yeah. There were certain mics in New York that were really good because they had rules where people weren't allowed to be on their phones and they had to give the performer attention, and I would put more of an effort in. Yeah. But then there were other mics, and I'm remembering one in particular, McDougal's mic. Yeah. That was just the most depressing place you could ever do stand-up. And I used to like going there. I used to force myself to go there because I knew no one could do well there. You just couldn't do well. No one wants you to do well. They're all on their phones.
Yeah. What a place.
They hate you. They're other comedians and they hate you.
I love it.
And it took me probably a couple of years to realize this isn't actually good for my development. It's not. I'm not getting anything out of this anymore.
Yeah.
Because I was, just this constant sort of emotional nothingness from going on stage that I didn't find particularly helpful. And that's why I was asking you about nervousness, because I think a lot of people also probably have this idea that a professional performer doesn't feel nerves anymore, but it's not the case.
No, I don't think so. I don't think that's the case. I think it's just a different kind of nervousness along the journey of your career. And the nervousness can come from being in a new venue, a new environment, an audience that maybe hasn't seen you a lot. I probably get more nervous going to a standard comedy club than I do performing to my own people.
I was just going to ask you that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I do, for sure, because my own people have bought tickets to see me. They've already got an understanding of the kind of comedy I do. They kind of know what they're getting. So it's an easier, not easy, it's just an easier audience to entertain.
Right.
Because they're already halfway there with you.
They're there for you.
They bought a ticket for you.
Is there no extra pressure with that, though? Because these are your people. They want to see you.
Look, definitely the pressure's there, because at the end of the day, just because you're halfway there doesn't mean you still don't have to impress them. You still have to give them their money. They're still paying customers. It's not charity.
You're right.
Like, they know you, they love your work, they're there to support you, but it's not charity. They're paying whatever they're paying, and they want to be entertained. You still got to treat it as a professional job. It's not just, thanks for your money, now let's just talk crap.
Right.
I still put in an effort to perform.
And so the nervousness that you feel with people who aren't necessarily your fans.
Yeah.
So why do you think you feel that more with them? Because surely there's less pressure.
When you're part of a lineup of comics, I feel a lot more nervous, because depending what the comic before you has done, what the one after you is going to do as well, and you've only got a limited time. You get, like, I was in Sydney at the Comedy Store over the weekend. I had 7 minutes. That's it. And they were really strict there. 7 minutes.
Light at 6?
Yeah, light at 6. And so when I see the light come, this is something you don't need when you do your own show, or you can, but like after an hour,
Right.
When you do, because the worst thing is when you've got a lot of material, like which 7 minutes am I going to pick that I feel is going to work here, But it's an audience that's seen all kinds of comics, and to be honest, in this day and age, most comics at clubs are filthy.
Really?
Oh yeah, they're filthy. They lend.
I don't know why I said that.
No,
I knew that. I don't know why I pretended like.
I'm not saying they're not funny, but I'm saying they're filthy.
Yeah.
They're filthy funny.
And you're a cleaner guy.
I'm a cleaner comic. So when you got, if I'm on fourth, or filth, and they've been laughing their heads off at filth, and then I come along.
It's hard to follow.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've got the gags. I've got some decent gags, and they will laugh. And I'm like, are they going to laugh after they've been laughing at them? The filth has set the benchmark of the night. And I find that challenging.
Do you have any feelings about clean comedy as opposed to what you called filthy comedy?
Yeah.
I mean, is it a principle for you to do the material that you do?
I just think that sometimes there are filth comedy that are actually witty, and that's great. But then there's just filth for the sake of being dirty for really
Shocking
no reason.
or...
Yeah, and there's really no punchline. That's
right.
It's like overly using swear words, like continuously. I feel like if you manage to get the same level of laughter by not being filthy, I reckon you've done a damn good job. At not having to rely on that.
For sure. I think that both are challenging. I do. So I completely agree with you. I do sometimes think that people believe incorrectly that, let's call it dirty material or whatever, is easier than it is. Because at the same time, I can say to a comic, okay, well then you go and talk about that and see how it goes. Because often talking about really disgusting things, most people don't do well with that material.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily do that. I mean, I'm definitely not a clean comic like you, but I do think that it's more challenging than people realize. It's very easy to bomb those bits because you can go too far. Because the goal is to play with people's discomfort.
Yeah.
And sometimes they won't like that. Sometimes you won't actually find you won't find that line? Because the whole point is to approach the line and gently play with the line, right?
Yeah.
Very easy to go over. Very easy to
You're
stuff
right.
that up.
You are absolutely right. And I think also, Ray, what it is, young comics who go straight into filth have probably taken inspiration from professional comics who do that kind of material, but have worked like for years before they were accepted for that kind of material. You can't just watch Eddie Murphy's Raw, who is hilarious, but filthy, but hilarious, and go, Eddie Murphy can do it, I can do it. No, you can't.
No.
You can't. It won't work.
It won't. It's very difficult to pull off.
Exactly.
So anyone who thinks that you can just go on stage and start swearing and that's easy, you won't do well.
No.
You won't get laughs doing that.
First, you've got to be liked, I feel.
Right.
Like being humble.
Do you feel that?
Yeah. I think the more you're liked, the more they'll go with you on whatever journey you want to take them on.
How do you go about being liked?
Well, that's, just try to remain humble on stage and just not come across arrogant.
Right.
And, self-deprecation is always an easy fix on that as well, to take the mickey out of yourself.
Do you make sure you open with a bit of self-deprecation?
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, a little bit, just depending what I want to open with. Yeah, I just try to remain me and not come across as though I think I'm hilarious.
Right.
I just come across, just present my material and have a bit of fun with it.
Do you know,
it's a hard one to answer, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe it too much.
Presumably you've met Brad Oakes, right?
I've worked with Brad.
Right.
Yeah.
I met him a very long time ago.
Yeah.
And he was once telling me his theory on status. Has he spoken to you about this?
No, but I feel like I've spoken to others about this.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's big on higher and lower status.
Yeah.
And for him, it's important that the audience gives him the higher status, if that makes sense.
Right.
And so I was wondering if you had any feelings about that theory, or you see comedy completely differently. I'm
not sure. I don't know if I
subscribe to that?
Or fully understand the status thing. I mean, every audience is different, right? I don't know if I can control that. It's up to an audience whether they enjoy the material and where they put me. I guess as the comic, you have to feel it and manipulate it.
Right. But there's no specific dynamic that you're going for?
Not for me, no.
Right.
No.
We were talking about the light before. Have you always been a comic that respects the light?
I try to, yeah. I definitely try to.
There's nothing worse than when you're on deck and someone is just not stopping.
No. You have to, in a lineup, if it's my own show and I say, hey, can you light me at, just before 1 hour, and then I go over, I don't care, it's my show.
Right.
I'm like, I'm paying the theatre, it's my show. If I feel like I'm on a roll about something.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's just to give me an indication of how long I've been. But in a club, you have to respect it. I mean, most clubs, if you go 30 seconds to a minute more, probably not too much more than a minute, they're cool with that, most. But you do have to respect it because it's not fair. You got to be fair to all the comics that are on.
Here's a question. Would you rather follow someone who killed or bombed? You have to pick.
I had to follow Dave Hughes.
And did he kill?
At the Comics Lounge, directly after him.
Did that affect
in
your
December?
Set?
Thank God, no. He killed, and whatever I presented got really strong laughs. People enjoyed it. But I was sweating because, and I said to the guy, "Why are you putting me on after? Put me on before. But I don't want to go on after Dave Hughes. I mean, he's going to have them in fits of laughter. I mean, I know where I stand. Put me on before."
It's a tough act to follow.
It is a tough act to follow, and even I said it to him as well. I go, "Look what they've done. They put me on after you." He goes, "Nah, you'll be all right."
And so you would rather follow someone who bombed?
No, that's not good either. No, that's not good either because what if you bomb? That's 2 bombs in a row. No, you want to follow. I mean, you can't dictate sometimes who you follow in the lineups. They just put you where they put you. Last week at the Comedy Store in Sydney, on the Friday night, I was in the second act, so it was like they'd been really warmed up by then. And then on Saturday, we did 2 shows. I was 4th on, so I was in the first act. So it can change.
Right.
But going on after someone who's a consummate professional of that caliber, I was sweating because I'm like, I wonder, are these people? He's brought them here. I can't go on and bring them here. You know, I've got to at least match a certain level of laugh.
How important is the MC in that? Because
very, yeah, absolutely.
You do a lot of MC work too.
I do, but not for comedy nights.
So I know you do wedding MCing.
Yeah, I do.
So you don't do stand-up MCing?
No, not really. Not a lot. Not a lot.
I can see you being good at that.
Yeah, I probably could do it, but I tend to just prefer to have my own bit. I do a lot of MCing for weddings, corporate festivals, things like that. Not a lot for comedy nights.
Right. I heard that with MCing, because I've never been an MC. I think I would make a terrible MC, for a number of reasons. But I've heard a part of the job is always making sure that the energy is at a consistent level. So if someone kills, you got to bring it back down. If someone bombs, you got to bring it back up, and just constantly at this sort of level. That's
the hard part.
Yeah.
With doing that, it's a big responsibility. And if you're the anchor there, like if someone bombs, it's your job to bring them back up, and you've got to have the skills and material in knowing how to do that.
Yeah.
It's a big responsibility.
I think it's a super underrated part.
That's
of
why
a
I prefer to just do my bit.
Yeah, because you can just go out and try and do your best.
Less responsibility. Yeah.
You know, whereas an MC sometimes has to go out and not do their best, and that's got to be tough. I want to talk to you about what got you into this. I don't want to do a biographical interview, if that makes sense, but there's this everyday wisdom that says that people who are attracted to the performing arts, on some level, whether they realize it or not, crave attention, right? Do you see that desire in yourself, or at least did you have that desire when you were younger?
I don't think. I think. Is there anyone that gets into performing arts that doesn't crave some form of attention?
I don't think so, but I didn't want to just accuse you straight away of wanting attention.
It's not a narcissistic thing.
No.
You know, we crave it. Those of us that are in it for the right reasons, we crave attention because we want people to see our work. We don't do it just for ourselves. What am I doing it for? In the mirror at home, like what? I want an audience. I want people to see my work.
But it can be an emotional need to some extent.
Well, I do say that I'm most comfortable on stage. One of the places I'm most comfortable at is on stage.
Right. Where do you think that came from? I know your dad was a performer.
Yeah, he was a performer.
Do you think that had...
I grew up on stage.
Do you feel like a part of it, because I didn't have a parent who was a performer, and so I'm trying to imagine what that would have been like. Pressure? Was there a desire to impress him in a way?
No, there was no pressure. I mean, there was no pressure. No, not pressure, because I enjoyed performing as a child, so there was no pressure in that. To impress him, no. I don't feel I ever, as a kid, went into it to impress him. In particular.
How did he feel about your career?
Yeah, no, great. He was very supportive.
Supportive?
Yeah, because I feel like, in many ways, probably my dad did it as a hobby on the side. But when he was younger, he would have loved to have had a career in that area. And I feel like in some ways he was always very proud because maybe his son did the career that he didn't get the opportunity to do.
Right.
Himself professionally, full-time, that kind of thing.
And you don't think growing up you were even subconsciously aware of that you were perhaps pursuing something that your dad would have loved to have done?
I think I understood that more when I was older. Yeah. I think I understood that more. I mean, as a pure example, like my father and I, we had for a while we had the same agent, TV agent.
That's awesome.
Right, and my dad used to get a lot of work. He had a big ethnic face.
Right.
He could do Italian. He was Italian, obviously, but he could do Greek, Spanish, Lebanese. He had a big mustache and just worked for a lot of productions. So he'd get calls for auditions, and the agent would call and go, this is back before email. You've got an audition. Blah blah blah, and he'd go, yes. What about my son? Got anything for my son?
That's so sweet.
Yeah, so he always looked out.
He was being your agent to the agent.
Yeah, to the agent, and the agent would be like, no, I'm cool. This is I don't have anything for your son today. You know, kind of
that's so sweet.
But a number of what about the pajamas? Anything for him?
That's great.
He wanted me to land some prominent work, which I only sort of landed more as an adult. As a child, I dabbled and things popped up,
Right.
but nothing of any high status.
You don't want to be a child star anyway.
Well, I would have been good time off school.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but anyway.
Do you think that your desire to be funny or your drive to be funny could have come from some sort of, I think a lot of people think it comes from a defense mechanism that we have, right? Maybe like making people laugh is a way to make them like us, or as a way to, for some people, it's a way to avoid bullying in school or whatever.
Yeah.
Did you have anything like that?
No, not.
I'm trying to start a therapy session.
No, I love
here.
it. I love it. Love it. I mean, sometimes they're not easy. Like you have to sort of dig deep and go. No bullying. No, not for any bullying reasons. No, not at all. There is this desire. When you say this out loud, it kind of just sounds wrong. But there is this desire, this sort of drug that runs through you. You enjoy people liking you.
For sure.
And some people might go, yeah, but doesn't everyone enjoy that? Yeah, but not in the same way a performer enjoys that. There is this fuel, it fuels you. When people come up to you and go, I love your work, I love you, especially people that don't know you.
Right, yeah. Well, especially when you're making them laugh, specifically.
Yeah, yes, because making people laugh genuinely is one of the hardest jobs in the world. It is easier in performing arts, it is easier to make people cry than it is to make them laugh.
You reckon?
Yes, because laughter is so subjective, as we both know.
Right.
For starters, humour is so subjective.
I would know how to go about making someone cry, though. I just couldn't do
I'm talking more in a dramatic sense, putting together a dramatic story that tugs on the...
Yeah.
What do they say? Tugs on the heartstrings, right? Can probably be easier to develop than it is to go, this is going to make people laugh. Yeah, that's a bit... Does it?
Yeah.
I don't know, you know? Yeah, in essence, yes, there is this sort of thing where you want people to like you. It drives you, and it's an odd one to say out loud.
Yeah, but I think it's important to acknowledge, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. We all want to be liked and loved and belong to a community.
Yeah, that's right.
But it is unique in that as a performer, you have that drive and you're pursuing that to strangers, pursuing that in front of strangers, like that desire to be like. Most people go about it maybe
with their friends and
family,
I get
trying to be something for them.
And that's why I say as a performer, it is a strange one because it's like, hang on, if this audience doesn't like me, that really is going to affect me. Where the everyday person walks around meeting someone casually and they go, oh, if you don't like me, I don't care.
I think everyone's bothered by it. But yeah, I think that the stakes are higher for you. The stake or performers.
Yeah, for performers. I do feel the stakes are high. Because without an audience, what are you? What is the point of all this without an audience?
Has that gone onto social media for you? I mean, you're followed by tons of people. Like relatively, you have a big following.
Look, it's a decent following.
Right.
Obviously, there are people out there with a lot more
but
than
relatively,
that.
it's big, right?
Yeah. In the grand scheme, it's a decent following.
Yeah, and I mean, so how do you interact with social media? So, for example, I don't have any following, and a part of me is terrified of this idea of having a large following. I don't know why, but I'm afraid of that audience.
Yeah.
Just being able to go on my profile anytime.
Yeah.
It's a very irrational fear. But how do you engage with social media? How do you engage with, I mean, presumably you've come across trolls.
Every day.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you go about that?
The bigger your social media gets, the more it lands, the algorithm develops, and the more your material will land in other people's pages who may or may not like you.
Right.
And the thing with social media is when they don't like you, they just decide they want to let you know.
It can be a cesspool of negativity.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Look, if it's just a casual negative comment, I might even just leave it and not respond to it. It's when people want to be really nasty for no reason.
It gets very personal?
Yeah. I'll either block it and delete it, or I'll just answer back publicly.
Why do you think they do it? What's the motivation behind their...
Oh, it's easy, right? It's just easy, and they get a kick out of it.
Surely there's got to be some sort of maybe...
But a lot of people are ignorant online as well. Like, especially with comedians, they'll write things like, this really isn't funny. And again, it's like, well, that's subjective because the other 120 comments are all laughing.
Right.
So clearly it's funny to them. Otherwise, they wouldn't go out of their way of going laugh, whatever, emoji, whatever it is that they want to laugh. So what I said, it's not funny to you. Please write, this isn't funny to me. At least go, this isn't funny to me.
Right.
You're missing the part where it goes to me. This isn't funny to you.
A part of it is also, there's a level of dehumanization that happens though, where they don't necessarily view the person they're targeting as a person with feelings.
Right.
So they can just write whatever they want. And they would never do that in person. They wouldn't do that to people in their community. And even on social media, they wouldn't message a comment on a friend's page saying something like that. Where do you think that dehumanization comes from?
By the way, it's always a profile with the picture of a cat or a flower.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's never a person.
Never a car?
Never a
I feel like the car
cars,
profile pictures
or dog or something
they're
like
the
that.
worst.
Yeah. Where does it come from? Jeez. I don't know. I've never felt the need to do that. If there's many things me would come across, I've never felt the need to get on my phone or the computer and go, I've got to let this comedian know they're not funny. You're not funny. I've never felt it. I just move on. I mean, why don't you just block them? Just block them so you never see their work again. Like, how hard is it? It's there.
There's something strange about comedy though, isn't there? Because no one would do that to a musician. If you came across a song you didn't like, I think very few people would actually comment something negative, unless it was just
Taylor Swift copped a lot of negative.
Really?
Yeah, online. Yeah, a lot of people not understanding what the hype is. She doesn't even sing well. Her music is crap. All this sort of stuff. Then you've got the other 4 billion people who love her, of course, right? So it can happen with the big artists. I don't know if it might happen with independent artists.
I just think there's something specific about comedy though, where if someone sees something they don't like, it's very common for them to react in a almost like physically negative way.
9 out of 10 people think they can be funny, like you sort of touched on earlier in the conversation. So 9 out of 10 people feel they're experts in comedy. Even prominent comedians are not experts in comedy. I mean, there's no school, there's no diploma in comedy, there's no degree in comedy. We learn it. Part of it is in you already. The other part, you learn it through formula, you learn it through practice, and you learn it through stage time.
For sure.
That you need stage time.
And also, what works for you won't probably work for anyone else.
Although there's formulas, there's no real answer. How you write to how someone else writes, there's no wrong or right here. If you're getting the same results in your formula that they're getting in their formula on stage, where people are laughing, enjoying, and coming back to their shows, what's wrong and what's right?
Yeah.
There's no...
Do you often have a lot of younger comics asking you for advice?
Sometimes, but it's more just, where can they start out kind of thing. The trickiest advice is, how do you write comedy? I'm sorry, I can't answer that.
Right.
I don't know. Because a lot of the time you do have to write from things that you know well about or that you feel you have a grounding in.
Right.
And I learnt that when I was doing my diploma of arts in theatre, and which is mainly was acting based, not stand-up comedy, but we had, as part of the course, we were doing writing, script writing, and it was always about, the one thing we were taught is write about what you know. Now, if you want to go off and research something and learn about it, fine, then you know about it, but don't just write about stuff you have absolutely no idea about and pretending you do, because it shows.
It comes across.
It comes across. You have no knowledge of this.
I think it's really difficult for younger performers to do that, though, because really when you're 18, 19, just starting out, you don't know anything. You've had no life experiences.
Yeah, but then you still have whatever you have. Skew towards that.
Right.
Skew towards your school life, your family. You still have family. There are lots of different topics you can touch on.
Yeah, for sure. I suppose for me, like, I look back at myself as a teenager, and it's really obvious to me if I look back at that material, like, oh, I was trying to be something that I wasn't.
Right.
Do you have the same experience? Do you look back at old material and say, oh, what was I? Like, I know what I was going for. I can see it. It's very on the nose.
Yeah, probably not as much, because I did stick always to that genre, to the genre of ethnic comedy.
Right.
That's my first entry into stand-up comedy was through that genre, and so I was touching on my family and stuff like that. So I knew about that. I knew how to find the funniness in those elements, taking inspiration from other comics that I loved as well.
Yeah, that's why did you pick that genre? Is it because you wanted to appeal to your community, or were there people who inspired you? You know.
Yeah, definitely people who inspired me, and also I don't know. I guess I loved it. I guess as a teenager or child watching comedians, I gravitated towards these comedians more, who were delivering material that I related to, and so. As I grew as a performer, I grew to love that genre more. And, you know, I'm talking about people like we both know, like Joe Avati, who gave me my first professional stand-up comedy job.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in professional stand-up comedy job.
How old were you at the time?
Oh, it was about almost 10 years ago.
Okay.
Now. Yeah. 2014, 10 years ago.
Nice.
2014. Yeah. I dabbled in stand-up comedy in that genre, which that's what led me to being noticed by him.
Right.
And then he gave me my first professional job, which ended up turning into a tour opening for him across Australia, which was amazing. So that's the other thing. I mean, in some ways, I'm very lucky. I was thrusted into audiences of like minimum 500 or more people, not these, you know, 10 people here, 5 people at a club.
Yeah, which is super uncommon.
Yeah, it is super uncommon.
Yeah, it's a very unusual journey.
Yeah, that's right. So in that respect, I'm very lucky. And then there's other colleagues of mine like George Capanaris, who when I was a kid was on Acropolis Now. Yep. In more recent times, people like Tahir, you know, all these sort of well-known names in ethnic comedy. I just loved what they did because I related to it, you know.
It's hard to be original in that genre, though, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, definitely. You've got to be careful. And so I keep a close eye on all their material as they develop new shows. It's important because I'm doing similar stuff. And you think the same sometimes. Yeah. And you might end up with the same kind of gag. Unfortunately, I can't. It's got to go first to the big people.
Got it.
Because
so you just defer to them if you have a similar idea?
If I had a similar idea, look, occasionally I've had similar ideas to the others and I might have performed it and then I've gone to see their big show and they're doing like a really close gag, so I just pull it out of my set.
Right.
Because there's no point because they get, you know, their audiences are big. And once people have seen them do it, if they come and see me do it, they're just going to go, you're copying, regardless of whether I might have had the idea first. And that's fine. That's not a problem.
Do you think the future of this genre is bright or not? Because it's kind of come back in a way where a lot of younger comics are doing it. I don't know how I feel about that. It's a bit strange to me when I see someone in their early 20s or teens trying to do ethnic comedy. They're like third or fourth generation. I don't know if I'm a fan. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. You know, and it takes me back to, you know, Joe Avati, his New World Tour. If you go and see his new show, there's a lot of stuff there now that doesn't skew to the ethnic comedy. It's more about growing up in the 80s.
Right.
And it's from the perspective of an Italian guy, but it's not always heavy on the Italian.
Got it.
And I think even he has, you know, started to, you know, develop some mainstream stuff that can take him... That opens up even more doors, you know. And Joe's already huge. So I look at things that like he's doing and go, you know, that there's something to take from this, because even people like Joe Avati know that you need more than just talking about family and you know, your traditional the sauce gag, salami gag, all that sort of stuff. So where's it going? I have no idea. I think you just need to reinvent it somehow. And because a lot of the stories, the core stories used to come from Nonni in particular, and the things they did. Now those types of Nonni, we're losing them.
Sure.
As the generations pass, we're losing them. So whether you can get a new audience to relate to those stories becomes harder because they haven't seen it for themselves. They haven't experienced it or seen it.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and sort of doing a whole show based on reminiscing without anyone that can relate to it will get to a point where it just doesn't work anymore because they don't know anyone that does that at all. They don't exist anymore.
Yeah, it can become very unrelatable.
Yeah, unrelatable.
And it sort of ties back to what we were talking about, where younger comics fall into the trap, and not just comics, but younger artists in general, and people fall into the trap of trying to emulate their heroes or idols. Yeah. And a lot of that stuff just smacks of that for me when I see a 20-year-old doing ethnic comedy now. It's like, you've kind of missed the boat, it seems like. Yeah. There's too many of us now doing it, probably. Yeah. To be honest, and then so you ask why? Well, why? Because it's kind of fashionable and it's popular.
it's always been popular to parody ethnic parents and stuff like that too. But it's not just Italians and Greeks now, you see. It's people doing parodies about all their family members from all the other.
Yeah, I was going to say
stand-ups. The Asian, sorry to interrupt.
Right.
The Asian community, comedy community, is absolutely huge.
Yeah, that's blowing up right now.
And they do a lot of that stuff too.
Yeah, for sure. I do think that there's something about stand-up that's become very representative, where people have a comic, their favorite comic is someone who represents them and their community. Which is great. At the same time, I've always loved comedians that make me a little bit uncomfortable, that make me that almost challenge what I think.
Sure.
And it almost hurt me in a way, which is quite strange. But I like you know that pang you feel if someone cuts to the core of something that you are or feel. I've always liked that, as opposed to, I don't know, someone representing me.
Yeah. I mean, and again, it's all about what genre of comedy you kind of love. You know, I mean, this whole ethnic comedy thing, it's this sort of subculture, isn't it, of comedy? It's not. While it can be appreciated by almost anyone, it lends itself to generating more audiences of that ethnic background initially, you know.
For sure. Look, man, we'll leave it there. This has been a really fun chat.
It's been great. It's been great. Therapeutic. Thanks, Ray.
I was just going to say, I was trying to go for that vibe.
No, I loved it.
As I said, we'll post the tour dates for the Mum Is Not Happy tour.
Yeah, that'd be great. Awesome.
And I can't wait to see the show myself, man. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Good to be here.